Well, we're back at the GSL Model Car Championship.
Oh, what a championship it was.
Just world class. This was the last one they're ever going to do, but this has historically been the most rigorous model car championship in the world. The best of the best are here. You know, as you get your nose right down in here, it's just amazing what you see with a lot of these cars.
Well, like this one, for instance, I swear they just took a full-size car and applied some kind of shrink juice and made it small.
And the paint job, 10 layers of paint there.
It doesn't look like 10 layers of paint.
It's astonishing.
Like, what?
Anyway, this week I thought we'd do a deep dive into one of these cars. This is Randy Durr's Greenwood Corvette, 75 Greenwood Corvette.
Wow.
He entered it in the replica class because it's an exact replica of a very specific car.
Hello, Dale.
Hello again.
How are you?
I'm shocked and I'm stunned.
Yeah?
I've never seen anything like this.
Well, thank you.
I mean, there's always one car
Yeah.
that jumps out.
Yeah?
And I can see one right here that's jumping out.
Thank you so much.
But there's cars all over the place.
I know, they're all
that are
jumping out. Yeah, yesterday I was trying to figure out what to take pictures of, and I was just, I couldn't decide where to start and where to stop.
It's like, okay, I'm already editing the video in my brain as I'm shooting because that's my process, and I'm going, there's like 10 cars in here that are a show in their own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I'm just lost. I'm literally lost.
We can take comfort in knowing we don't have to judge the contest. So this is the Greenwood Corvette, the Sebring 75 car, as it raced at the 24 Hours of Daytona in 1975. So the research on this started back in about 2016, 2017. A friend of mine from the East Coast, Jan Hyde, helped me track down people who were associated with the car. And in late 2017, I started making contact with some of those people. A gentleman out in California who previously owned the car, and a classic car broker in Florida who, when I talked to in late 2017, informed me the car had just been sold and shipped to France. And so I thought, well, okay, it's gone. I'm not gonna be able to get to it, but I talked to the caretaker of the car over in France, and we had a nice conversation. He invited me anytime I'm in Europe, stop by, and you know, you're welcome to photograph it, measure it, whatever you need. And a work trip to Germany early in 2018 got me closer to France than where I live in Ohio, so I extended the trip, flew down to Marseille, drove down to Paul Ricard F1 circuit, and the car was in a shop near the F1 circuit.
Private collection?
Yeah, spent 2 days with the caretaker of the car, Patrick Caldenti, and he was so helpful. He and his mechanic, they took off wheels, took off body panels. It was up on jack stands. I just took 1,000 photos, made hundreds of measurements and dozens of drawings, and just started building it. The frame is a lot of brass, a lot of aluminum.
I always find this kind of brass fabrication just unbelievable.
Yes, it's like jewelry making, but just a car.
It's the exact same process,
Right,
in fact.
right.
In this case, the very first thing you need to do is to construct an armature that's going to hold all of these parts and pieces in place while you solder the whole thing together in order for it to be properly square and straight and so on. Then plastic parts can be attached to that framework because the brass itself is very stable, where plastic is notoriously not dimensionally stable.
No.
And it will want to warp and so on. So you can attach various plastic pieces to the brass.
And a lot of these pieces are aluminum just to get the proper metal finish.
And I think aluminum is 10 times harder to work with than brass.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And once you get paint on the brass, it takes paint and it just looks so beautiful.
Oh, that is amazing.
Super, super clean build. And then simply adding on the thousands of detail parts.
And detailed they are, even the fire extinguisher.
Beautiful. And of course, you need to add a car body.
The thoughts of constructing a car body with all the curves and notches and ridges. How in the world?
In this case, at least he had a model that he could start with.
The body was loosely based on the Toyota 78 Corvette. Had to backdate it to the 73, had to make it the Roadster instead of the coupe. And of course add the Greenwood flares and all that. But
So were you able to pull anything from the kit then for that, or just use it as inspiration?
well, the basic body structure served as like an armature to build the body over. Look at it that way.
Got it.
Yeah.
And one of the things Randy has done extensively on this model is make rubber molds, RTV molds, and then cast the parts in resin.
That won't hurt.
No, well, and in this case, by the time he finished the hood and the top, it was cobbled together out of so many pieces of sheet plastic that the fear of it breaking, cracking, the putty all coming loose. So he used those as patterns, made molds, and then cast those parts in resin.
Oh.
So they'll be nice and strong, one piece of plastic instead of a whole bunch of seams filled with putty.
Right.
The wheel flares, by contrast, are just made entirely out of sheet plastic built directly onto the body and not recast into resin.
And some 3D printed parts for the engine and transmission. Got those from Shapeways. But as we all know, some 3D parts need a lot of work to make them really look the way you want them to look.
So you were able to find actual parts on Shapeways, or
Yeah.
did you have to do the 3D?
No, I went looking for the Rock Crusher M22 transmission, and lo and behold, they had it as one of their product offerings, 12 scale. And they had that, the bell housing, the big block Chevy engine, and then that really unique cross ram manifold. So ordered it all up. Thought, why not? Give it a try.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah. But in the end, some of those parts I probably spent almost as much time making them look right, just because of the material and the resolution they chose to print them in. And you don't really have choices always.
And all of the various fuel lines and cooling lines. Look at that top radiator hose.
That's a long one.
That's like, 36 inches or something.
At least.
And the way he built that is rather diabolical. He took a piece of insulation off of an extension cord, stripped that out, slid that piece of insulation over a brass rod, turned it down on his lathe until it was the proper diameter, and then came back with one of those little Dremel cutoff wheels and added the notches in there, the grooves for flexibility.
Oh my goodness.
And then simply bent the brass wire and everything into shape so that it would fit on the car. And check out the pulleys and belts.
They're blue.
That's because they're blue painter's tape.
Oh my goodness.
Sometimes simple is good.
It is.
First, the pulleys were machined on the lathe, again out of aluminum. Then the belts were constructed out of blue painter's tape. And then to the sticky side of the tape, a very, very thin layer of styrene plastic that could be notched to line up with the pulleys. And the painter's tape has the exact right texture so that once it's painted, it looks exactly like a notched rubber belt.
Sorry, my mouth is hanging open. It really is.
This one little detail is amazing, and yet the whole car
Yeah.
is like this.
Wow.
Now, header pipes.
I can't wait to see what they were made out of.
Well, this is aluminum rod,
Uh-huh.
annealed with a torch so that it's very soft and can be bent into these very complex shapes.
Right.
And then those rods have to be attached with a flange at the engine, and then the collectors are built out of brass tube and brass sheet metal,
Goodness.
all soldered together. And then you can see that the aluminum rods simply poke into the tubes on the collectors, almost like on a real header pipe. And that's how the entire header assembly here was constructed.
Wow, I wonder if it can start and run when he's finished.
Oh, it'd be so much simpler to build a real engine that starts and runs.
Right.
Building a miniature one is 10 times more complicated, 1,000 times more complicated.
Oh, more than that, yeah, it's off the chart.
Now check out all the various cooling lines and fuel lines, some of which are braided.
I was just noticing that. How in the world?
Very small coaxial cable with the insulation stripped off and just using the braiding from inside of the coaxial cable.
Wow.
And then other tubes are, again, aluminum rod, but at the ends of every one of these things has to be the connection, the nut connection that connects it to the engine, which is anodized.
Yeah.
So all of those are painted with a translucent color paint to make them appear to be anodized aluminum.
Wow.
There's the old saying that God is in the details. And if so, then this is a very heavenly sight.
It is. I'm not sure how to behold. I mean, a what?
Now, wheels and tires. Again, most of this car is scratch built, so you've got to scratch build wheels and tires as well.
Oh boy.
Well, those are resin cast tires, and the logos on the side, the lettering on the sidewalls has been laser engraved in the RTV mold, so that then you had raised letters on the part after you cast it. And the tread ring, I made a master and machined in the tread wear indicators. So a tire itself is 2 sidewalls and a center tread ring. Once you get those together, get it all smoothed out and looking good, then I painted it on the tread area with a textured paint to make it look like the tire surface. They're not smooth.
I'm looking at that and I'm going, that's
like
a tire.
Marbles and things on them.
That's a tire, yeah.
So that's how those were done.
Now, a tire is nothing without a wheel in the middle of it.
And the wheel...
I saw some impressive machining here.
Thank you. The wheel is kind of a composite build. There's an aluminum outer rim, an aluminum inner rim, and then the center spider is a resin cast part that's made of a master that I did, and the master was made of a number of resin cast pieces. You know, you make one spoke, resin cast 5 of them, and then you can build the wheel master.
Then the wheels are attached to the car through the brake mechanism.
Right.
And this is made in a somewhat similar way as the wheel hubs. The rotors are made out of discs of sheet plastic, and then the air cooling notched into the end on the lathe. So here we can see 2 of the rotors and 2 of the hub pieces that will attach to the rotor to turn the whole thing into a contiguous rotor. The rotors and calipers were then cast out of material. A mold was made and they were also resin cast, but the discs were all individually constructed because of the complexity of the little air cooling holes in the rim.
I can't even imagine.
Well, and then the rotors were layered over with stainless steel, very thin stainless steel, so that they could be turned in the lathe to add the wear pattern from the caliper rubbing on the disc.
Right.
All of the suspension parts are constructed out of brass, and it's very interesting how he's done this. The individual pieces were done sort of in an origami style, you might say. They were laid out on the computer, figuring out exactly how that would fold up into the shape. Then that paper was adhered to sheet brass so that it could be cut out and then simply folded up into the appropriate shape, and all of the various seams and joints soldered together.
Wow, sort of like those Metal Earth little puzzles I put together.
Exactly.
Wow.
And there's the finished product. And then the various upper and lower control arms and struts. Just unbelievable. And look at the anti-rollover bar here.
What? Yeah, I'm just, like I say, I'm speechless.
And the bushings that hold that, and the nuts and bolts that hold that whole assembly together, it's all here.
Right.
Now, check out the CV joints
Oh dear.
on the rear end here. Aluminum tube and then little microscopically constructed universal joints.
Right, look at that.
And there's the final assembly of the rear end and rear suspension.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it looks like it could, really go in a car and work.
Well, and it does work.
Right.
It's just miniature,
But it's-
that's all. Now the construction of the drive shaft tunnel.
Wow.
Even on the original car, all made out of sheet aluminum,
Right.
pop riveted and heliarched together. And notice how he's done the heliarching.
That's interesting.
This is a technique that you've used a million times using that metal repair tape.
Oh, that stuff's wonderful.
And he's cut it into very, very, very thin strips, laid those on the joints, and then just kind of knurled that with a toothpick to look like heliarching.
Oh, wow.
Now the upholstery is my old friend Green Stuff. We refer to it sometimes as Billy Mays' Mighty Putty, which is
That's wonderful stuff.
the Billy Mays' Mighty Putty, not so much, but the actual Green Stuff, which is essentially the same product but of a much higher quality, and you can get that at Green Stuff World or even at Micromart. Anyway, you blend the yellow and blue epoxies together. It forms into a green putty, which can be stretched and formed, or in this case, rolled out into a very, very thin section. And then the texture and pattern of the upholstery embossed into that. You have to be careful that your tools have a little bit of lubrication on them or they just get stuck to the putty.
Right.
But because the putty is sticky, at that point you can apply the putty to the seat frame, and what you end up with is pretty nice looking upholstery.
Oh my goodness. Check out that 5-point racing harness.
And the way this was done, the buckles and bits and pieces were laid out on the computer, and then printouts sent off to someone who does photo etching
Oh.
out of stainless steel sheet. So they just chemically etch that and send you back these little teeny parts etched out of stainless steel. And then the belts themselves are a fabric material.
Right.
And then the printing on there is the same technique you use. Just printed out on the computer
That's amazing.
and stuck on there.
Wow.
There's actually quite a few fabric parts on this model as you start really looking around.
I still find that amazing because fabric likes to unravel.
That it does. And working in tiny miniature this way.
Ah.
And speaking of your technique, he made the gauges the same way you make the power meters on all of our buildings.
All right.
All of the interior there is printed out on the computer. In this case, he's actually constructed actual needles.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just printed, that's an actual
That's a
little
needle.
part in there. And then that whole thing is mounted to a turned metal bezel and then a clear plastic lens placed over the whole thing.
Wow.
Then you just have to go ahead and knock out all of the gauges for the
Yeah,
entire
just-
car this
yeah.
way. Piece of cake there. Because there's quite
dear.
a few gauges in this car.
Yep, there are.
And then all of the little switches and lights and knobs and so on that go along with that. And that constructs this part of the control panel, which mounts into the dashboard with the
What?
other gauges and lights. And there's the finished control panel for the car.
My.
It's a work of art in
It is.
itself. But once you see it mounted in the car, it almost tends to vanish amid all this other detail.
Right.
And finally, painting the car.
Oh, boy.
This, for me, with automotive subjects, is the most intimidating part.
Right.
I cannot do a proper automotive finish. I love painting models, but I've never been completely happy with the finish on a car. So anyway, what Randy's done here is he put a proper primer on and then shot the whole thing with a gloss white and then had decals made for the graphics.
Oh, wow.
Because it's not like you're going to be able to take the decals out of the kit. So he did all of the artwork and sent this off to someone who made wet slide and dry transfer decals.
Nice.
Some of them are wet slide, some of them are dry transfer. And then it's simply a matter of placing those properly on the car.
Right, don't shake.
Now, I'm not sure if he applied a clear coat over the decals. I sort of assume that he did, but I don't actually know. But you don't see any edges here on any of these decals, so I'm assuming that he had some clear coat over the whole thing to cover that up.
Right.
Now, if you want to know more about the car, you can scan this quick reference code and it will take you to his actual build book with like 1,100 photographs.
Oh, man.
Documenting how he put this together. And it is an impressive build,
Yes.
and the judges were impressed by it, and it did come away with quite a few awards.
Oh, nice.
Well, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, please subscribe and set your notification bell so that you can be notified as we follow up on more of this show. And if you're not a subscriber, the easy way to become a subscriber is by clicking on the blue button. Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We sure hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here on Tuesday.
Right.
With some more fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.